Nintendo's Super Mario franchise made the ambitious leap into the world of 3D on the Nintendo 64. Along with introducing new game mechanics for the brand new Mario outing, Nintendo had several goals with the release of Super Mario 64. Naturally, it was a way to show off the capabilities of the new hardware, letting Mario strut his stuff in full 3D. But it was also a prime outlet for Nintendo to wean players into the realm of analog control. Nintendo made the bold move to incorporate analog control right out of the box. And to anyone playing Super Mario 64 on the system, it's pretty obvious that the game and the controller were developed side by side. The end result. Super Mario 64 became a massive commercial, critical, and design success for the Nintendo 64 console, and though future games have built upon and improved on the ideas established by Nintendo's development team, gamers still regard Super Mario 64 as one of the finest examples of 3D platforming ever created. Almost a decade since the game's debut, Nintendo has revived the fantastic design for a new generation of players. The intention is nearly the same the second time around. Nintendo's system needs a killer app to demonstrate its new system's capabilities and unique control structure. Super Mario 64 DS successfully demonstrates that the Nintendo DS has the right stuff to recreate an existing 64-bit game on handheld hardware, and there's no question about the quality of the game's production value. The problem lies within the fact that the game was always meant to play with a Nintendo 64 controller. Though the Nintendo DS developers pull off the game's original control structure extraordinarily well on a system without an analog stick, it still feels like a compromise, and begs the question, if this is your killer app to show off the system, why the heck didn't you include one in the first place? If you can manage to get past this question, though, you'll find a fantastic gaming experience that pushes nearly every element of the Nintendo DS hardware. You may not be convinced that dual-screen touchscreen gaming is the future after playing Super Mario 64 DS, but at least Nintendo offers up some genuinely creative and enjoyable ideas to complement the existing, already fantastic Nintendo 64 game design. When Nintendo created Super Mario 64, it didn't just change the perspective. The entire game structure of the Super Mario series shifted just as dramatically as the camera view did. Players no longer worked through linearly designed levels to rescue the princess. Instead, each area, a fully explorable world, had been designed in such a way that gave players many different tasks to complete, each with the same goal. Grab each of the challenges star to move on to the next area. To unlock areas deeper in the game, players need acquire a set number of stars, and even though players didn't need every single star to finish the game, it's the temptation to complete the checklist that kept players going until everything was done. That feeling has been completely retained in the Nintendo DS version. In fact, it's been enhanced. Super Mario 64 DS isn't a straightforward port of the Nintendo 64 design. The original N64 plays as the foundation for the newly developed Nintendo DS edition, with the handheld version's developers constructing fresh ideas on top of the existing game design. The most obvious difference is in the game's introduction, where players begin the game as Yoshi, not Mario. It's a slight and clever nod to the ending of the original Super Mario 64, but more importantly, this new beginning introduces a slightly altered gaming experience. Even if you've completed the original Nintendo 64 game, you've got some new challenges to accomplish in the familiar arena. The addition of Yoshi as the beginning's character is only the start of the new stuff, and it's a brilliant way to slowly present all of the additional elements introduced in this remake. As Yoshi, players are faced with the new task of rescuing Mario, Luigi, and Wario, as well as Princess Peach, who have all been locked away in the princess's castle. By securing stars scattered in each of the many different areas, cleverly presented as magical paintings that must be leapt into, players can advance through all of the locked doors in the castle, which lead to other levels and star challenges. The game, of course, isn't Super Yoshi. Mario returns to the gameplay very early in the adventure, but only after teaching the basic controls through the green dinosaur. Though Mario isn't selectable right from the start, players have the ability to transform into the plumber if they can find his hat scattered somewhere in the level. And it's this transformation ability that actually adds to the fun and challenge of the established Super Mario 64 game design. Many times players will need the right man for a specific job, and sometimes being a dinosaur isn't going to cut it. Mario, Luigi, and Wario share all of the standard Mario controls, but they've been tweaked ever so slightly to give each of the mustached characters their own unique abilities. And they each have one drastically different move that's activated by a power-up. And there are a handful of stars out there that can only be acquired by the specific character. And the player must do the necessary thinking to figure out which one's the guy to do it. The unlockable characters means new locations in which to find them. Super Mario 64 DS actually builds in brand new level challenges specifically for this purpose. And they've been integrated so well that unless you've played through the original adventure on the N64, you'd never even know they've been added after the fact. There have been 30 new star challenges added on top of the original's 120, adding a lot more to the dozens of hours already needed to finish the established N64 design. The original Super Mario 64 on the N64 utilized the system's analog stick to maneuver the on-screen character, and Nintendo definitely put that stick through its paces right out of the box. The on-screen character ran, walked, or creeped depending on how much or little the stick was being pushed in that particular direction. This control scheme, combined with the controller's action and camera buttons, gave Mario a huge arsenal of moves, and the designers put these moves to use in all of the game's level challenges. Then the Nintendo DS, however, lacks an analog stick. The default setting puts the original analog controls to the D-pad of the handheld, and after playing it this way, regardless if you've played the original game or not, it's clear as day that the game was never meant to play this way. Nintendo shoehorned the different speeds of Mario by combining button presses with the D-pad direction. So if you want to run or creep, you'll have to hold a button down to do it. True, this is the way control had been handled in 2D Super Mario titles, but in a 3D world, these digital controls are incredibly imprecise and in fact get very cumbersome in certain challenges that require careful timing. In Super Mario 64, there are a lot of these moments. As an answer to the system's lack of analog control, Nintendo's developers have created what can be considered analog stick emulation in its alternate touch mode control option. Incorporating the clever thumb strap included with every Nintendo DS, don't leave home without it, folks, the designers enable a virtual analog stick on the touchscreen by recognizing a center point where players rest the tip of their thumb on the touch panel. By sliding the thumb pad in any direction, players can manipulate the character in the same precision as if they were playing the game with a real analog stick. The problem, however, is that the screen offers zero physical feedback. There's no spring pressing against the thumb to reposition it back to center, and the thumb naturally tends to keep sliding on the screen, even when players have maxed out the most extreme analog position. Players will find they'll have to lift their thumb off the screen and reposition it back to a location where there's plenty of room to continue sliding the pad. With practice, however, the limitations of the touch mode can be overcome and learned, and after a few completed challenges, it's clear that this control option is really the best way of playing Super Mario 64 DS. Still, even mastering this option requires a lot of compromising thumb action during play, and even skilled touch mode players will still find themselves fighting the on-screen character into doing what they want him to do. The fact that Nintendo chose to bring an analog-heavy game to the DS brings to light the company's decision to omit the stick from the system's design, and touch mode is the spit and bubble gum that fixes the problem. It's far from perfect, but it does the job. The skewed control system, an admittedly important part of the enjoyment, is really the only hard criticism of the game's production. The rest of the package is top-notch, pushing a lot of fun ideas of the Nintendo DS functions on the gamer. There are several dozen collectible games in the package, obtained by catching bunnies in the main adventure. They're not integrated very tightly in the overall presentation, more offered as a side benefit. And as cool as many of these basic game and watch style challenges are and how well they utilize the two screens and touch control, the way they're presented, it makes the cartridge feel like Super Mario 64 plus mini games. The other big addition is the multiplayer function using the Nintendo DS's wireless capabilities. Only one copy of the game is required, sending the required data to anyone within range who wants to partake in the battle. In this side game, players enter one of 4 areas as a colored Yoshi, fighting for stars scattered around the location. Picking up Mario, Luigi, or Wario hats will turn that player into the designated character, which offers hand-to-hand combat abilities that can knock stars out of other players' possession. Even though this mode feels a little rushed, the fact that it's only single cartridge is a good indication of its quickly developed cycle. It's a hell of a lot of fun with 3 or 4 players. 2 players, not as much, but it's a good diversion and a cool way to show off the networking capabilities of the new system. But we can't forget the actual technical side of Super Mario 64 DS, and at the very least, the developers put on a great first-generation show during the main adventure by demonstrating the DS's 3D and digital audio effects. Even without texture filtering, the Nintendo DS version looks night and day better than the N64 version, with much more detailed textures as well as higher polygon models for the characters and level designs. The refresh never strays from its 30 frames per second rate, though there are occasional bouts of scenery pop and distant items. But the system can definitely hold its own with some great effects like transparencies and the familiar water ripple technique when leaping through a painting. The developers even throw a cute little utility in the beginning that shows a cool vector editor where players can tweak and stretch their hand-drawn artwork. Super Mario 64 DS is, without a doubt, the most complete of the dozen launch titles in the Nintendo DS lineup. Not only is the game a great port of a fantastic game design, the development team pushed the system capabilities enough to show the benefits of the system, but at the same time, the choice of porting over an analog-heavy game design such as Super Mario 64 also points out its glaring omission. The Fix, a touchscreen analog stick emulator, is a good idea that's entirely functional, if just a little flawed due to the lack of physical restraints. The Nintendo DS version does everything it sets out to do, demonstrate nearly every one of the new system's capabilities. Super Mario 64 DS shows off that the system's significantly more powerful than the Nintendo 64 in both graphics and audio, at least as a first-generation title. It also pushes the system's touchscreen functions. Though many of these additions feel like supplements, then they are important integral elements to the game design. But they certainly are welcome and definitely increase the value of an already great title. At the very least, you can depend on at least one game in the system's launch lineup to bring hours, days, and weeks of great fun on the new hardware, even if it may not exactly be the system seller people are expecting out of the Nintendo DS's launch window. While I would have loved to experience a brand new Super Mario game that incorporated and integrated the system's capabilities, it's at least great to experience a well-produced and expanded version of a tried-and-true formula.